Hello, how are ya? Well, just one couple remarks about my last video. Somebody commented and said, oh, that was not really the Pope. I guess it must have been an imposter. It says there was a disclaimer on the bottom, and I did read the disclaimer. The disclaimer didn't say it wasn't the Pope. The disclaimer said that the views may not necessarily be the views of the Vatican. That's what it said. Didn't say that it wasn't the Pope. So no, I still don't know, is it from the Pope or not? I would think if it's not from the Pope, wouldn't somebody do something about it? YouTube, Pope, Vatican, Jesuits, Catholics, wouldn't they say something? I don't know. But it really doesn't matter, because what I claimed in my video last time was just simply that cannot be changed, that the Pope is, of course, the man of sin, the little horn, and Babylon the Great. That still will remain. And if it's not the Pope that was really speaking there, then, yeah, we have even more false teachers claiming to be the Pope, and they're not. But just wanted to say that. I'm not claiming it was. I don't know. I don't have any proof myself. I thought it was interesting that somebody, though, is claiming that the seventh seal was already broken, which it's definitely not the case. That's all there's to it. So now to my new topic. My new topic is about Israel, the state of Israel. Or should I say the Jews, or whatever. I was starting to watch some videos with Shlomo Sand, who wrote a book, Challenging Notion of a Jewish People. I don't know what was his Invention of Israel, I think. That's what was one of his books. How I Stopped Being a Jew is another one. So I was looking at some of his speeches here. And one of them that I want to really address today is this idea that really probably most all Jews believe, that kind of circulated and probably also maybe is believed by Zionist Christians. Let me know if you have heard this, that the Jews were exiled by the Romans in 70 AD from, it must have been Judea, because that's what Jesus called it. Jesus called it Judea. He didn't call it Israel. He said in Matthew 24, when he talked about it, the destruction of the temple, when you see these signs, then flee Judea. He didn't say flee Israel. Why not? Because during Jesus' time, Israel didn't exist. So during the time of 70 AD, Israel didn't exist either. Judea did, but it was never under the rule, of course, of the Jews, but of the Romans. And the Jews constantly rebelled against the Romans. Even though the Romans, the land belonged to the Romans for the past, 500, maybe not quite 500 years at the time. But no, they kept rebelling. So did they get expelled from Jerusalem? I have talked about that many, many times. When I talked about the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem, the abomination of desolation, Matthew 24, the first part of the chapter. That was 70 AD and the time before. What happened? Well, Josephus, I always say Josephus, Flavius Josephus. Please inform yourself. I have done a lot of videos about Flavius Josephus. Yeah, the history is very interesting of the guy. Was a Jew, I think. Was he a Jew or was he Levi? Was he from the priestly tribe of the Levites? Anyways, he was fighting in the war with the Romans. You know, the Roman wars that the Romans and the Jews did fight for many, many years. And he was captured. Actually, yeah, he was captured, I'll say that much. And he actually stayed with the people that captured him. The Roman general who captured him, which was Titus' father. And I don't know, Claudius, don't remember what his name was. So he stayed with him, and he went to Rome with him. They became very good friends. I think even he adopted him. This guy later becomes the emperor. And of course, Titus, his son, also. He also came to Jerusalem with Titus and was there as an eyewitness when Jerusalem was destroyed in the time before the destruction. He wrote everything down in his book, The Wars of the Jews, Volume 5. So from him we know very clearly that most of the people in Jerusalem at that time were absolutely killed. The blood was flowing down the gutters. Only the very strong and healthy were taken captive into slavery. They became slaves. The rest of the people, which were not very many, in Jerusalem were killed. Matter of fact, most of them killed each other before the Romans even took over and intervened. And yeah, because there were two factions, two leaders of Israel, two leaders not of the Jews in Jerusalem, that fought each other. So they already killed each other before that. And then the Romans came in and just finished up. Romans took, like I said, the healthiest into slavery. The rest were gone. And so, yeah, there were still people left that probably did flee Jerusalem a long time before the end. And they were probably still the poor people, the farmers in the land. However, even this Shlomo said that there was another rebellion, Kapochka. I don't know for sure, but there was another leader of the Jews that claimed to be Messiah, and I think in 133, who also led another rebellion, probably the final rebellion. And if there were not any Jews in the land, well, how could they have rebelled? Again, at that time, probably most of them were killed. And some of them stayed still behind. Again, the poor, the farmers. Yeah. He also says that even 300 something, when they wrote down the Mishnah or something. I think the Talmud was written down then too. Supposedly it was written down actually in Jerusalem. Also, I know that around that time, the Jews wanted to rebuild, around 300, build the temple in Jerusalem. So there must have been people still there around that time. And they were not all exiled. Now, there were already Jews living in the diaspora, not exile, but diaspora. In other words, they freely were living in other parts than Judea. Okay, like we know that Paul went through, the Mediterranean world, and he met with Jews in synagogues all the time. So there were various Jewish communities all over the Roman Empire. So they were already dispersed, not forced dispersed, so a forceful disbursement, but because of trade or whatever. We know of Priscilla and Aquila that lived in Rome. So we also know from Paul that there was a Roman community in Rome. Not because they were exiled, no, because that community formed before even 70 AD. So yeah, that is all interesting. That no, the Jews stayed there. And then he asked the question, so what happened to those Jews? Why have they not been there when, like during the First World War, during the Ottoman Empire? Well, it's very simple. Because they converted to become Muslim. That's why. Some of them, they converted because of convenience again, because they had more benefits. And again, some Jews moved around. Of course, the poor didn't move around. They stayed right there. And again, most of them became Muslim. So who are really the people right now in the Palestinians? He's saying that too, are really, in reality, Jews. If there could be really a genetic test done, I would guarantee that those people have more genetic traits of Judah than the Jews that claim to be Jews today. And that's actually what this Shlomo sand is also trying to show. How can you, after 2,000 years, really show that you are a descendant of Judah? The worst part, though, is if people say, oh, well, a Jew, and which a lot of Jews do, a real Jew is a one that is actually following Judaism. And then I'm going to tell you, Judaism has hardly anything in common with the teaching of Moses. It's all interpretation, and no, it has nothing really to do with Torah. Oh yeah, they claim and they hold Torah up, but they don't study really Torah. They study Talmud, the interpretation. That's what the Pharisees started during or before Jesus' time, during the time of the Babylonian captivity. That's why it's called the Babylonian Talmud, because that's where it started. And the Pharisees and, the Sadducees and the scribes, they all went by Talmud, by oral interpretation of the law of Moses, which ended up not being really the law of Moses anymore. That's why they didn't recognize Jesus, because they didn't teach the prophets or Moses any longer. Jesus told them that. He said, you are children of Satan. You don't know Moses, you don't know the prophets, or else you would recognize me. And that's true. There's also somebody else, and I don't know, may have been from Shlomo, and I don't know, somebody else, who said that these people, these Jews, these Pharisees, may have been not even really Jews like from Judah, but more converts from the Amorites, which happened also while the Jews came back from the Babylonian exile. There were Amorites there, and they converted to Judaism. And so now many of the Jews during Jesus' time were actually a mix genetically. But they have been, again, living as Jews by the made-up Judaism for a long time. Again, today's Judaism is an extension of what the Pharisees taught. An extension, because they had more and more and more and more interpretations of false teachers. I believe I have mentioned them. I don't know if I mentioned them on my German video or this one, or on this channel. But so yeah, this Shlomo Sand has a lot of important things to say. He's a Jew himself, lives in Israel, right? Grew up in Israel. He is actually a professor teaching in Israel. Yeah, so should he know? No, I'm not telling you anti-Semitic stuff here. And then, he was researching who came up with this exile idea that the Jews were exiled from Judea. Well, he came up with one of the politicians, Ben Gurion, and he worked with a rabbi, some Shlomo guy. They came up with this idea. That's today, of course, is taught to every person, every child, he says, in Israel. Probably every Jew, too, in rabbi school or wherever. Rabbi Sunday school. Sabbath school. Sorry. So yeah, that is very false. And that's what I didn't even have to listen to Shlomo Sand. And I don't have very much, information. I have Josephus that I'm going by. I don't know too much about the Bar Kokhba revolution. I didn't study that. But I know the Jews were not exiled in 70 AD. Or else Josephus would have mentioned it. And he didn't. Josephus was a Jew, right? So, okay, again. This history is very important. Of course, it's not important to me because I am awake and I have done my research for years about the Jews, and really, can you really, again, trace your ancestry back 2,000? No, you don't have to trace it back 2,000 years, but 2,000, 3,000 years to Judah. Now, during Jesus' time, many kept record. We know that of the lineage of Jesus. Many kept record. But after the destruction of the temple, that was more difficult because they lived constantly in wars, constantly in destruction, constantly in survival mode. And so they didn't keep record. Nobody can trace back their lineage. Can you imagine? If you look at Jesus' lineage, that was over a period of how many? 4,000 years. Okay, somebody kept lineage. Even if you go back 3,000 years to Shem, right? Noah's son, or Noah. And then Abraham. And then Judah and all the tribes. Most people don't do it. And then we have today people that say, oh, we can trace ourselves back to Aaron. You know who Aaron is, right? Aaron was a Levite. He was Moses' brother. And all the Levites trace themselves back to Aaron, not necessarily the Levites, because I believe the priests only came from Aaron, not the Levites. They call themselves Levites, but they are Levites, of course, but they trace themselves back to Aaron. Strange, another strange history. So who can trace themselves back really, okay, lineage-wise, like Jesus did? Jesus had his lineage spelled out. Every generation, the name of every generation, of every person, right, in that generation. All the way back, actually, to Adam. So really, can every Cohen, that's the high priest, or not high priest, those are the priests today, can they trace themselves back to Aaron? I just heard that Kahn, is it Jonathan Kahn, is claiming that he can trace himself back to Aaron. No, I don't think so. I don't think he has the name of every, family member all the way back to Aaron. He can't claim that he is from Aaron. That is a lie. Really. I want to see his lineage. Wow, endless lineage. I want to see his lineage. Everybody who claims they're Cohen, right? Claiming themselves to be priests from the Levites, or actually from Aaron. I want to see it. But yeah, I'm kind of distracted right now. I think it's interesting and it's important that we do research this history. But again, we're not supposed to do that because we're anti-Semites if we do. And again, even that word, come on, somebody really needs to make a definition what anti-Semite is. Is it just anti-Semite anybody who goes against Israel? Is that what an anti-Semite is? Then why don't they just say anti-Israel? And I would definitely admit, yeah, anti-Israel. And not really anti-Israel. I'm just critical of things that any government is doing. Any government. Because every government is in the hand of Satan anyways. And I always say that. And Israel is no exception. They are only being used. They may not know it, and they may make it look like it's all Israel. No, it's not. They are puppets. They're in the hands of somebody above them. I don't care what anybody says. They're puppets. They don't know. They don't know that they're being used to wage war, to kill people for somebody who is above them. Who is it? Well, is it this Antichrist that so many claim? Antichrist, who's already here? This whatever? Who is that? Who owns most of Jerusalem? It's the Vatican. My last video, I talked about it. Who is, Babylon the Great, the little horn, who is the man of sin? Who has an interest, of course, in controlling that region? Also the money people, the merchants who bow down to Babylon the Great. We read that in Revelation 18. Yeah, the merchants. See, Babylon the Great makes sure the merchants get the money. So where they will continue to do her bidding. That's how they get motivated, by money. If you don't give people money or power, they're not motivated. So the Vatican works with, of course, the merchants and give them, favoritism to the merchants, so they will bow down again to the Vatican. Oh no, you don't see that in the public, right? In the front line. No, that's all happening in the background. But yeah, I'm going a little bit deeper here now. Just want to say, I don't have anything. No, I am very critical of what Israel is doing. Very. Because, again, they are being used for the dirty work of maybe the Vatican. I'm not going to claim it right now, but it's a theory right now. I admit it. It's a theory. It's a, what do you call them? A conspiracy theory. That's what it is. It definitely is a conspiracy. Yeah, and a theory too. Hey, it's a theory, let's prove it or disprove it. That's what theories are for. Theory is not there to say it's false or it's not correct. It's not a theory. A theory is an unproven thing. Okay? See, most people, when they say conspiracy theory, they think, oh, it must be wrong. No, it's just not proven yet. But hey, if we throw it out, then we don't have to see whether it's true or not. So it's really something that we don't want to prove. That's what many say that's what conspiracy theory is. Throw it out because, hey, we don't want to know what it is. Anyways, again, I got a little bit distracted. I'm coming to an end. If you have a chance, watch this Shlomo guy, Shlomo Sand. I will put the video on the bottom. We have to know everything. Especially people if you're still stuck in Christian Zionism. Some of you, most of you that have found my videos, you know better. But then again, there's always some people that are stuck in dispensationalism and follow Christian Zionism. So that's why I want to bring also these videos and this information. Is it important for our salvation? No, not really, but it is important. Well, it could be, because do we want to be deceived? No. If we're deceived, we can lose our soul. That means we will, can I say lose salvation? Yeah, I don't know. That's a question, isn't it? Well, if you're a true, evangelical Christian, you say, oh no, once saved, always saved. And then there's parts in the Bible that New Testament, like in, I know Hebrew for sure, and there was another one that I just saw recently. was it in Peter, who was questioning? If somebody falls away, I don't know. You let me know what you think. Okay? Let me know what you think. And I know Hebrew is very, very good. I mean, those who fall away, can they really come back? Will they not, that's the way he word said, will they not crucify the Lord all over again? Okay, that's part of it. I remember. Yeah, anyways, I'm coming to an end. Let the Holy Spirit guide you always.